Okay, it is June 7th, I think, 2017. Interview with Lily. So, Lily, I want to talk to you about three subjects, hopefully. Meredith Vieira, the interview there, and your kind of bounce back and kind of how you felt about that.
Who's that again?
That one interview you had, the FaceTime one, where you got the stage fright. Remember? This is going to be a good one. We'll talk about that. I'll try to remind you. And talking about Auntie Kate with two things: arts and crafts with Auntie Kate, and then another discussion with Auntie Kate about after the NPR thing. Okay, so let's start with the hopefully the easy one. So arts and crafts with Auntie Kate around this time, all the kind of neat stuff you did, that foam like the seahorse with the jewel encrusted. So you want to how'd you tell us anything you remember about doing those arts and crafts with Auntie Kate? How did that kind of besides the obvious of her taking you to Bug House, but I mean did that help you to, in the proverbial, build your confidence, or how'd you feel about arts and crafts, and did you feel you were good at it, and did you enjoy it, and did that help to give you something you felt was...
I mean, I enjoyed it. I didn't know if I was good at it, but I enjoyed it.
So it was more just like fun and games. It wasn't really anything that you saw as necessarily validating, or...
Yeah.
You'd say that's right?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you, I mean, didn't Auntie Kate always say, I mean, she was always telling me, like, how special she thought you were, good with your hands and stuff, but that never really, wasn't really believable to you, or?
I don't know. I guess it just wasn't very believable to me because, I thought, being academically smart was more important than that.
Why'd you think that? Why didn't you think arts?
You tell
crafts?
me. I don't know.
You don't know why? It just didn't seem very real.
Yeah.
Didn't seem very valid. It was just, that was more in the category of being good at playing on the swing set or something.
Yeah.
Okay. But didn't you say, I mean, there are artists and stuff, Auntie Kate's an artist, but it just didn't fall in the same category as things you can accomplish things
it was a lot of because people told me that it was really hard to make a living as an artist.
So even as a young age, that kind of stuff really sunk in. And
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think you're so concerned about making a living at that early?
Well, I mean, I guess... Well, I mean, I still am, which
Right.
I guess it makes a lot more sense now, because I'm gonna be in college in,
Right.
3 years. But, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of people worried about money.
Around you, your family.
Yeah,
And your,
a lot of people just generally were anxious and worried about money,
Right.
which I guess just kind of rubbed off on me.
Right. Right. Okay. So even before you really understood exactly what money was, you knew it was a problem.
I basically just knew it could get you stuff, that's all.
Right. And when not having it would create anxiety.
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, interesting. So actually, I'll take this in a different direction then. So that was sort of, talk about the transition between Bug House as an art thing and then the invention. And do you ever remember a time when you're like, oh, this isn't just art, it's invention, and invention is a way to make money? Or do you ever remember any kind of feelings about that? Or
Not really that per se, but more of when it was actually in production and I saw the money coming in, I realized that that was proof that I
Right.
could do something like this, which is something that, one, I like to do, and two, that didn't create anxiety for me.
Right. But my recollection is even before the money, I remember you looking over my shoulder at the first Indiegogo campaign, and there was like a bar. At that time it was we sold $20,000 worth of cups, but $20,000 didn't mean anything. It could have been $24, and you've been like, oh, is that a lot? Because you had no concept of money at that time. But I mean, there was a bar like that was going across the screen, like and at some point showed we at Victory, so that part you kind of understood. But more than that, seemed to really like all these comments were coming in from people who were buying it. This is even before we'd shipped, and that seemed to really like resonate with you. So do you think that had anything to do with? It seemed to have less to do with money and more just like it was legitimate, like you were solving somebody else's problem. Do you remember anything along?
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, like, of course, money had something to do with it, but there's a lot of factors into it. Yeah, the part when I said like I like to do it, that's where the comments come in. Like that's where the Kickstarter comments come in, and like that's I guess what really made me like doing it.
Right.
So.
And did that also? Do you think that dovetailed in with making it feel legitimate and like a potential business and not just an arts and crafts project?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, and I feel like this business has made me realize that there's more to it than being academically smart, because you can be smart in other things and that's still just as valid, and
right.
That's what I've learned. But I feel like that's something everybody learns, by the way. Eventually. I feel like that's something everybody learns. Some takes a shorter time to learn that than others, some take longer, but I feel like everybody learns that that academics is not the only thing that determines like you as a person.
When do you think most people learn that?
I feel like most people learn that when they find something that has nothing to do with being academically smart that they really like. I mean, like some people, like even teaching, like a lot of teaching doesn't have anything to do with being academically smart. It has something to do with being creative. It has something to do with teachers learning different learning styles for each student.
Right.
Like that doesn't even really have anything to do with 1 + 1 = 2. That just has something to do with how can I make this kid learn in a better way.
Right.
So whether, I guess, what you like to do has something to do with academics or doesn't, I feel like there's always going to be that one component that doesn't really have anything to do with it, and I think that's when people understand that.
So you could even learn it, I mean, that's kind of ironic, you could learn it from something different about a teacher? Like, are you saying that some students, like, realize their teachers' styles are what's making them effective, or what did you mean by that example?
What do you mean?
Well, like, you just made your point that a teacher can be a good teacher with areas other than book smart. Is that how some people learn, or did you mean more like, you said you start out that with some people, they find something they love that's outside of, schoolwork.
Yeah.
Was that a different point about like, that even teachers can be effective at teaching without being book smart, or?
I mean, with teachers, you definitely have to know your stuff, because you're teaching a subject to other people who don't know it.
Right.
So it's definitely important that you know your stuff, but it's also important that you know everything outside of book smart.
Right. Because
we're all human. We're not robots. We have emotions, we have feelings, and I feel like this is coming from me, who is not a teacher, but
right.
But at least in my inadequate opinion, I think to be a teacher, you can't just be book smart. You have to be emotionally smart, and you have to be creative.
Right.
And I think that's a lot about what being a teacher or professor is about.
Right. So I'm kind of hearing two different paths to you learning there's more than book smart. One was the kangaroo cups, and two is just general observations of life. you say that's fair?
Yeah. I mean, again, there's a lot of factors to life and what affects you and what doesn't and what
Right.
affects other people. But I mean, I feel like that's how opinions form, is from your own personal experiences and from what you see. Your opinion may not be very accurate to another person's opinion, but I feel like that's just generally how opinions are formed, based on what you see and what you've experienced.
Right. Okay. Um, okay, so that's interesting. So maybe it's not even, I mean, maybe it's just coincidence that you have both this understanding and then the Kangaroo Cup really kind of kickstarted a direct path to something more valid. Did the two kind of ever come together? So, I mean, how are you finding, like yesterday when we were working around the sleevaroo or whatever we call it, and there was this whole page of math equations that we were, working on to figure out the length of the thing. How does that, do you have a vision for how, like, those two things come together, or are they just today in your mind just totally separate? Like,
No, they definitely come together. I know.
how do they come together?
I mean, it's like, like what you said. But I mean, what are you trying to do? God.
I don't know. I mean, this is going in a totally different direction, but that's okay. And it just seems like an interesting thread because, the underlying current of school and, book smart and not book smart, but then kind of coming together, and it's very nuanced. And you gave this really interesting example of, a teacher, ironically, despite the fact that they're teaching you to be book smart, really requires a lot of non-book smart intelligence. So I'm just kind of following this thread because it's like a central thread of the book anyway. Like um, you know, academics and not academic, all that stuff. So
Well, I mean, I feel like, because, like, okay, so like, left brain, right brain.
right,
That's not very like very accurate. I'm pretty sure that's
Okay.
what I read, because the brain is a thing that I don't think any scientist has fully comprehended on what
sure,
happen. Like, we don't even know where dreams come from.
right.
Like, we just know what happens. But
They come from the other side. I know that. They're messages from the other side.
But I mean, it's like, but I mean, so I feel like, because, like, I'm pretty sure, at least this is what I've read, that we're both, like, that we're all left-brained and we're all right-brained in some
Right.
way, and
Sure.
they come together to form what we think or what we know, and
Right.
but so I'd like to think of it as that, like, just the brain itself.
Right.
Again, not a neurologist or any sort of scientist, again, my inadequate opinion, but I'm being honest here, because I don't know anything about the brain. I haven't gotten to anatomy or physiology, but I mean, it's like I feel like book smart and creativity does come together at one point, but I know some people who are more right brained or left brained, but work really well together, because because they're so strong in each personality that they can form together and make something great. So they do come together, but sometimes just in different ways than others. At least that's what I think.
So the left brain. So that's interesting. And then, but the other interview I think we had, you're like, well, school's all about regurgitating the same information. I mean, do you feel like you're getting that left brain stuff out of school, or?
And to be honest, I forgot which brain's which.
Like the left, the right is creative, the left is like
Yeah.
the more logical, methodical
Okay.
side. So I mean, do you feel like, it's just a metaphor, like you say, it's not really that distinct, but I mean, I don't know, the things that are book smart, those disciplines and stuff. Do you feel like you're getting that, or is your, or is your kind of enthusiasm, if you will, for school, is that just all about getting through it and getting into college, or do you feel like you're genuinely starting to learn things that can be useful, or what do you?
I mean, again, like back to being a teacher, like it really depends on the teacher.
Right.
Honestly, because a really good teacher, like a good teacher will one care if their students pass or not.
Right.
They will they'll put their time and energy into you if you return that time and energy back, and they'll make sure that, and they'll understand that you might not learn the same way the person that sits next to you learns. It's all about, it's like that's what a good teacher will do. Like it depends on the teacher, because I've had good teachers, I've had not so good teachers. Not so good teachers, like they just like like
Right.
they just like tell me something, I'm like, I didn't catch any of that, but oh well.
So give a memorable teacher and a good teacher, and tell us what you kind of learned and what you're kind of what you think you're taking away and keeping with you from that good teacher.
Adig
Okay.
was a good teacher.
And that was this semester.
That was this
for,
semester
for business.
Yeah, that was this semesters for business and tech 2.
Okay.
And she's actually being transferred, which is kind of upsetting, because I took a class because I filed for a class next year just so I could be taught by her, but she's being transferred to North. So I don't know who's going to be teaching the class, but hopefully they're good. But I mean, Adig, she well, I mean, so she won. She knows not to be extremely strict, like very very strict. She knows not to be like
Right.
militaristic, because that won't work with anything.
Right.
Like at least that's what I've found with every single bad teacher I've had. They've all been very militaristic. It never works. But
Right.
but like at the same time, she does know how to discipline.
Right.
She does know how to discipline the kids, so she knows like, hey, so they know like, hey, she's not here to mess around. She's here to teach you.
Right.
But she does know how to she does know a certain balance of that, and I think that is part of what makes her really good.
Okay.
Another thing is the fact that, again, she does care, and she's always like, all right, well, you can just always ask me for help if you need it. I'm here. That's what I like. A lot of people, like a lot of teachers say that, but they're not very approachable, I guess is what
Right.
you could say. But that's what I like about her. She makes herself approachable, so you can get the help that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that makes it really good is the fact that that when you go up to ask for help from her, like she will actually give you useful information.
Right.
And not like say, oh, just look in the book or look at my website, and she'll like if you say like I can't find this or I can't find that, then she'll show you like
Right.
how to find it or like where to find it, like that. Like one time, so I was doing a research project on pretty sure like college debit cards.
Okay.
And then I was like, I can't find the APR. So then she just got, and I gave her my computer. She was like, everybody was been having trouble with this. She showed me, and then I was like, all right, problem solved.
Right.
And so, and then once she showed me, I could remember for the next card I was researching.
Right.
So she actually gave me useful information,
Right.
which a lot of the worst teachers I've had just say like, look at the book. I'm like, I've been doing that for the past 15 minutes. You
Right.
think you could help me here?
So what do you think you got out of that class at the end of the day? I mean, what do you think you learned from that second semester business and tech?
I've learned that insurance companies have nothing but time, money, and lawyers.
So it sounds like that class was very practical, and unlike like we talked about the product development process, like this, as best you can tell, is fairly realistic and useful. And is that true?
Yeah.
So it's kind of that kind of stuff, like
Yeah, like
how to
that.
research products and
Yeah, like that stuff has been useful. It's like I I like practical subjects, I guess is what you could say. But I mean, I I mean, but I've had good teachers for, I guess, like not so practical things like like uh like some subjects in math.
Right.
Like some things you're never gonna learn, you're never gonna use in real life. But I've had good teachers that taught it, and it actually like stuck with me. So
Okay.
yeah.
Um, okay. Well, let's see how much we got here.
How's your phone?
It's not too good. Okay.
It's trying.
Well, let me just tie this out. Then we went in a different direction than it's 21 minutes. So just one kind of to tie this out. So do you think, like, I know your position with math is that, hey, I'm never going to use this, and maybe that's true because I don't know, you're not very engineering bent, I guess. But what about things that are kind of broader subjects, humanities in a broad term? So learning this, history and some of that stuff. Can you imagine how that circles back and becomes important to your kind of career, or does that just seem totally abstract?
What do you mean?
Well, like, can you imagine a time when you're like, geez, I'm glad I really do understand the broader context of history, because that, you okay?
I bit my lip.
So can you, or I mean, English or any of these things, can you imagine how that, like, circles back into becoming useful, or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily. I told you it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I mean, like, for certain things in history, it probably, like, there are some things that we should learn about
Right.
in history. Like, that's just a fact of life. But like, I'm probably not going to, like, I mean, I already do this, but I'm not, but I mean, like, it's probably not every day where where, um, where someone's gonna ask me, like, it's probably not every day where someone's gonna ask me when was the Battle of Yorktown, which I already know, by the way. But it's, but yeah, it's the same thing. But if there's a really good teacher, then it will probably stick with me.
Right.
And like the same thing with English, like this year's English teacher, like he was all right.
Right.
Like, yeah, he was fine.
Right.
Like, he wasn't super great, but he wasn't terrible, so
Right.
okay. But I mean, like, he actually, like, taught us some useful stuff. Like, he
Right.
didn't, like, just give us, like, book after book, which
Right.
a lot of my friends' teachers had. But a lot of my friends had. Like, the only book we actually read together as, like, a class book was Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Okay.
The rest he basically, he actually, like, fit in what we were going to be doing on the final.
Yeah.
Like, and we were doing that basically, like, all year. So a lot of the final is reading analysis. So he basically, like, picks the genre, we pick the book, and he sends us, like, questions to answer about the book, which is reading analysis,
Okay.
which is what we're supposed to do for the final. So, like, and he also taught us, like, a lot of grammar stuff, which is obviously important if
Right.
you're gonna write, like, a college essay or
Right.
like an essay for a resume. Like,
Right.
it's obviously going to be, like, at least, like, basic grammar is obviously going to be important.
Right.
But I mean, like, some of the stuff he honestly taught us was really, really complex, and I think, like, basic grammar would have been enough. But I mean, there are some factors in humanities that are useful, just like there are some factors in math and science that are useful. But it's really weird because there's a lot of talk about how because there's definitely a lot of talk about how kids want practical subjects being taught in school, and I definitely agree with that, and that's why I took the class.
Right. Business and tech.
Yeah, business and tech, which taught me how
Right.
to like rent a house, buy a car,
Right.
like things that I would need to know. But I mean, for subjects like, um, like math, like you never know when you're gonna need it. Like,
Right.
but I mean, for everyday life, you're really only gonna need basic math.
Right.
But I mean, it depends on what you want to do. For I think a lot of math. I think
Right.
it just depends on what you want to
Right.
do for a career. For history, it's like you should know at least some parts of history.
Right.
At least some. At least like the key points. But
Right.
and then it's like for English, you definitely have to know basic grammar because
Right.
that's just a fact of life, and you definitely should have a decent vocabulary
Right.
for your age.
Right.
And then science, like it's like in terms of the world and ourselves, we should know. I feel like we should know how the world around us works like scientifically,
Right.
like so biology, like it's like it sort of gave me like biology this year. It actually gave me like a pretty broad view
Mm-hmm.
because it's like now every time I see a fly, as long as it's not touching me, by the way. But like if I see like a fly, it's like we're somewhat genetically related.
Right.
but I mean, and like we should know like how the world works scientifically and how we work scientifically. So like
Right.
I don't know if there's that one like weird rash on your leg, then don't go on WebMD because it will tell you that you are dying.
Right.
But like, yeah, I guess concluded, real life skills are, I guess like academic skills can be just as important as real life skills. Done.
Academics can be as important as real
Yeah.
life skills. Okay.
In
Interesting.
certain areas, of course, but
I mean, I think as you get older, you'll find that broader stuff does have pertinence and it gives you this context. But it takes time. It takes life experience. I do feel you're a very wise kid for your age, but you're still 14, and the older you get, I think the broader your horizons become in general. Okay, thank you very much. All right, this is where I intended to go with this interview, but it's still very interesting, so thank you. All right.